Doctor Who has gone woke. A phrase you've probably heard a lot over the last few years. All these YouTubers basing their entire careers on this narrative. All these news channels convincing us that politics have ruined a once great TV show. It's a difficult topic to navigate and discuss. The debate around wokeness is shrouded in so much extremism and fear-mongering and buzzwords and pronouns! I've never shied away from discussing politics on this channel, be it talking about a political allegory or making my own in relation to whatever I'm talking about. This video is actually inspired by a rant I went on in my review of the latest series of Doctor Who, which I was pretty proud of. Until the BBC copyright claimed it to oblivion, and now it's basically unwatchable. This is also sort of inspired by Channel Pup, the creator of the Absorbaloff, who made a good video earlier this year about the issues with the politics in the current era of the show. Despite that, I still refer to him as the creator of the Absorbaloff above all else purely because it's kinda funny. I've seen the debate around the messaging and politics of Doctor Who change and evolve over the years. And frankly, it can be a little saddening seeing the discussion around this show that I love so much being tainted by petty squabbling and toxicity. With that being said, the current era of Doctor Who under Russell T Davies does genuinely have a major politics problem. And I find it almost as saddening seeing the way the show conducts itself and its morals at the minute. So, I'm here to give my 2 cents on the topic. This video isn't meant to serve as the be-all end-all to this debate. I'm sure this argument will still be going on long after I'm dead, or cancelled, whatever happens first. This is just me hoping to add something to the conversation, while still taking every opportunity I can to nerd out about Doctor Who. Now, I feel the need to start things off by explaining where I stand socially and politically, and my opinions on political commentary and media. Just to show my credentials, as it were, to prove that the arguments presented in this video are not being made in bad faith or with shallow reasoning. I'm definitely what you'd call a woke leftist pronoun. I very much lean left socially, politically, and economically. I'm also queer, disabled, and neurodivergent, so it would be kind of weird if I wasn't left-wing. I'm also all for diversity and social and political commentary in media. I think that those things have always existed and been very apparent in Doctor Who historically, and anyone who denies that, and claims that the show has only gone woke in recent years, is basically admitting they weren't paying attention. If these opinions are enough to turn you off this video, you probably weren't going to listen to what I had to say anyway. Now, what are my opinions on Doctor Who? Mate, fucking look at my channel, what do you think my opinion on Doctor Who is? I love this show. I always have. It has had a chokehold on me since I was 5 years old, and it doesn't look to be letting go anytime soon. I'm a Moffat-era girly first and foremost, but the first 10 series of the revival all hold a very special place in my heart. And a fucking massive space in my brain. I can probably recite every episode in that period word for word from memory. Okay, slight exaggeration, but I'd still say I have a more or less encyclopedic knowledge of series 1 to 10. I have watched and enjoyed plenty of what's come since. I've watched the majority of Classic Who, I've watched Torchwood and the Sarah Jane Adventures many times, I collected every edition of the Doctor Who Adventures magazine for around 4 years, so I think it's safe to say I am probably what you'd call a Doctor Who fan. Before shoving me in my locker and taking all my lunch money, the show has had a massive influence on me as I've grown up. So many of my mannerisms and morals and things I quote on an almost daily basis come from this show. It, alongside my unhealthy obsession with musical theatre, are basically the main reasons I would like to pursue a career as an actor, and getting a role in this show is genuinely one of the ultimate goals in my career. Murray Gold's composition has also been a huge inspiration to me as a musician. What I'm saying is, this show means a lot to me. And so I hope you understand that the criticisms in this video come from a place of genuine good faith. That I loved and still love this show, and want it to be great, and to succeed, and to be entertaining and insightful in meaningful ways. Which is why it pains me that the current iteration of the show has fallen short in many of these aspects over and over. Now, I've enjoyed plenty of episodes of the Bad Wolf era of Doctor Who. I think Wild Blue Yonder is up there with some of the all-time greats. I think Boom to Rogue was a great run of episodes in Series 14, and Lux to the Story and the Engine was another great run in Series 15. I think Ncuti Gatwa was fun and charismatic as the Doctor, and his vibrance and eccentricity definitely helped elevate a lot of his scripts. Unfortunately, this period of the show has been repeatedly brought down by some very questionable creative decisions, an inconsistent, muddled tone, and some truly abysmal series finales. Plenty of people have ripped into the show's writing in recent years, but that's not really what I want to focus on here. It will still be relevant to some degree, as it is connected to the main issue I'll be talking about, but my attention in this video will primarily be focused on the politics and messaging in the current era, and what I consider to be the real problem that too many people on both sides of the argument are struggling to see. As I said, Doctor Who has always been progressive and overtly political. The problem with the current era of the show is that the progressive and political aspects feel incredibly superficial. They don't come off as the writers genuinely having things to say, they come off as virtue signalling. Now, this isn't always the case. There have been examples of these things being woven into the narrative quite well. But even when that is the case, it feels hypocritical due to the attitudes presented by Russell T Davies in response to criticism directed his way. Dot and Bubble comes to mind. A great episode that tackles the issues and consequences of social media and echo chambers. How staying in your bubble can cloud your view of the real world and can lead you to adopting some very selfish and toxic views and ideologies. There's definitely more of a focus on right-wing echo chambers in this message, how there are a lot of people on the right who are so dedicated to their bigotry and narrow-mindedness that they will willingly make their lives worse out of nothing but petty spite, or to own the libs. It's a good episode with a good message, but I can't help but find the lecture on echo chambers a little hypocritical, when the best way I'd describe Russell T Davies and the whole Bad Wolf clique would be echo chamber. Russell will repeatedly make snarky replies and block people on Instagram who dare give him any sort of criticism. It's fair enough when it's just people giving him homophobic abuse, I get that. But he gives the same reaction when people are giving open, fair critique on his creative decisions. And I know he's definitely spent decades dealing with death threats and thinly veiled bigotry being sent his way, so I can understand being apprehensive, but he seems to have put so much effort into surrounding himself with yes-men that he now dismisses anyone who criticizes him as an alt-right bigot, which is just not the case. He just says so many weird and stupid things, and by his own admission, his main intention with these statements is virality. He will openly admit to sacrificing the art of good, pre-planned storytelling for the sake of online publicity.
Very much kind of internet age storytelling where you just hope it'll generate content.
And I think that's also the reason he says weird things and acts so reactionary. It's such a weird course for such a brilliant writer to take, especially when he holds such power over this show he and millions of others love so much. Being so callous and reactionary with the main purpose of pissing off anyone who isn't on his exact wavelength politically. This behaviour is basically the equivalent of right-wingers sabotaging their own lives to own the libs. And not only that, but RTD ended the most recent series of Doctor Who by giving the Doctor's companion the same fate the conservative grifter villain gave her. Belinda started out as one of the strongest companions the show had seen in a while. Pretty much every companion from Series 11 onwards was just a yes man to the Doctor. There'd be little to no conflict between the Doctor and their companions, and it was boring. Belinda was a breath of fresh air. She wasn't afraid to challenge the Doctor at first, serving as more of an involuntary companion in a way the modern series hadn't really done before. I mean, I guess there was Dan, but again, zero conflict. As the series went on though, Belinda's role in the episodes became less and less significant, before the finale dropped one of the worst character assassinations in the show's entire history. Belinda wakes up in a conservative wet dream, where she suddenly has a baby. Even after she's freed from the brainwashing of this wish world, her entire personality still revolves around the fact that she has a baby, something she showed no desire for previously. The bad guys are eventually defeated, and Belinda's baby vanishes with them. But the Doctor makes the decision to retcon Belinda's entire life so that she can have the baby she never showed any fucking desire to have. This was literally the plot of The Villain, by the way. The Doctor does the exact same thing the villain did, and it's portrayed as some heroic, loving sacrifice. What the fuck? Russell T Davies literally did the same thing he wrote his evil far-right villain to do, but suddenly decided it was a good thing because he was doing it. The morals of this period of the show are so inconsistent. In the first episode of Series 15, Belinda calls out the Doctor for scanning her DNA without her consent. In the final episode, the Doctor scans her daughter's DNA without consent, and Belinda doesn't care. The design of the sonic screwdriver was changed because the old design looked too much like a gun, only for the Doctor to defeat the bad guy by using a gun. Not only that, but literal children working for UNIT are given guns in their Segways, and the TARDIS suddenly has a magic laser beam that genuinely just fucking kills someone, and we just don't acknowledge this fact at all. This all builds up to perhaps the most egregious mishandling of political commentary in the show to date. Series 15, Episode 6, The Interstellar Song Contest. This episode is all about a parody of Eurovision, a massively popular European song contest that happens every year. Eurovision has faced lots of scrutiny in recent years for their repeated inclusion of Israel in the competition, despite their blatant war crimes against Palestine. This episode clearly serves as commentary on Eurovision's complicity in the ongoing genocide. The Interstellar Song Contest is sponsored by the corporation who desecrated the planet Helia, killing the native species and harvesting the hell poppy for its honey. This leads to Kid, one of the few surviving Hellions, orchestrating a terrorist attack, killing the 100,000 people watching the competition in person, and planning to use a delta wave to murder the 3 trillion people watching the broadcast at home. This, on its own, is so ridiculous. It feels like the number of potential dead people was made to be so incomprehensibly high so we wouldn't pick up on the obvious flaws with the villain's plan and how it inherently contradicts the supposedly pro-Palestine message the episode should be pushing. The whole guy looking for revenge who takes things too far thing is a recurring trope in modern media that I really don't like. Mainly because it gives the scriptwriters an easy excuse to avoid having to tackle the obvious flaws of the person or group that we should also be fighting against. The Doctor is so blinded with rage when he learns of Kid's plan that he doesn't stop to ask why he's doing this. Kid outright says he's getting revenge against the corporation, and the Doctor doesn't think to ask why. He disarms Kid's delta wave and then tortures him. The Doctor, a genocide victim, played by Ncuti Gatwa, a genocide victim, tortures another genocide victim. He then doubles down on his decision to torture Kid and sends him off to the very corporation that caused his people's genocide. What the fuck? The Doctor is so evil and ignorant in this episode, and the fact that the show doesn't properly acknowledge this makes it a genuine stain on the show as a whole. The closest we get is Belinda hugging the Doctor and him saying, "My bad, I got angry." But never mind that, look at my sick dance moves. Listen to the song. Go on social media to talk about the 30-second TikTok clip where an obscure Classic Who villain 99% of the audience doesn't know is suddenly brought back with no build-up or backstory. The Israel and Palestine conflict is a very serious topic, and one that I don't think should be parodied through a camp, poorly allegorized episode that encourages us to hold hands and sing songs around the campfire while we ignore the blatant genocide being live-streamed to us daily. The Interstellar Song Contest is a scourge on Doctor Who and its legacy, and a prime example of the modern era's obsession with virtue signalling and surface-level politics. There's also a major problem with how the show represents minorities. Now, Doctor Who has had a pretty diverse cast since Series 1. Even the classic series was quite ahead of its time when it wanted to be. The 10th Planet featured the first black astronaut in television history. The problem with the more recent series is that the show has a diverse cast for no other reason than for it to brag about how it has a diverse cast. Yasmin Finney plays Rose, Donna's trans daughter. Cool. In her first episode, she shows signs of a character, but a lot of focus is put on the fact that she's trans. Which is fine, I'm not going to act like she has no personality in this episode. But then the episode says she's non-binary? I think? I really don't know what the aim was here. Then, in all her subsequent appearances, she literally just exists. She stands in the background, barely uttering a line of dialogue. Occasionally, the show will acknowledge that she is, in fact, trans, but that's literally it. This is some pretty lackluster representation for a community that really could do with some support right now. Surely there's more to be done with Rose as a character than she is trans and she faces transphobia sometimes. The show's disabled representation hasn't been great either. Now, I will acknowledge a time when I think the Bad Wolf era got this topic right, and that's with Series 15's The Well. This episode is a sequel to the Series 4 episode Midnight, an episode that holds up a mirror to us as a society, how we look for someone to blame when faced with times of fear or uncertainty. The Well expands on this commentary, and puts a modern, topical spin on it. This time, the conflict revolves around Alice, a deaf person, and so the episode contains commentary on how society will often turn its back on its most vulnerable people when faced with times of uncertainty. I think the character is well written, the commentary is poignant, it's an example of genuinely solid representation. The Series 15 finale is an affront on our civil liberties and I hate it. Back in Conrad's Wish World, disabled people are out of sight, out of mind. There's this scene where they all plan a big revolution, and their grand plan involves standing outside until a building falls on them. And that's all the disabled representation we've got time for this week. Tune in next time to see Belinda dismiss the struggles of disabled people for the sake of her child who didn't exist less than 24 hours ago and she didn't even fucking want.
But if we don't end the wish, this stays as Conrad's world.
That's not happening. Absolutely not.
Don't you tell me what we can and can't do. Not one of you is taking her out of existence. Have you got that?
This is Shirley Ann Bingham, Unit's new scientific advisor, and a wheelchair user. Cool. But just like Rose, she barely has a presence in the episode she's in. There'll be an acknowledgement that she's disabled, perhaps the villain will make an ableist remark towards her, but once again, she's consigned to the background, barely having any dialogue or impact on the episode. It's painful because this kind of thing keeps happening, and not only is it poor representation, but it ends up feeding into the anti-woke narratives, and makes the fight for good diversity even more of an uphill battle. And it pains me because I agree with these messages. Yes, trans rights. Yes, disabled people are repeatedly overlooked by society. But surely we can add more to these scripts than, hey look, we have minorities. Look how fucking woke we are. Anyway, remember to never stand up against genocide. It's all style and no substance, and it doesn't have to be this way. A perfect example of a diverse cast done right is the first 2 seasons of Sex Education. There are characters of all different ethnicities and sexualities, and these aspects are woven expertly into the plot, with character arcs that are genuinely emotionally investing, and fit the overall plot of the show incredibly well. Adam probably has my favourite character development in the entire show, his struggle with accepting his bisexuality tying in beautifully with his other arcs of learning to be a better person, discovering what he likes to do, and overcoming the trauma and insecurity instilled in him by his emotionally abusive dad. I really don't like Isaac as a character, but that's fine, because there's at least a character there for me to dislike. I don't dislike him because he's poorly written, I dislike him because of his behaviour and recurring character traits. There's an actual personality there for me to form an opinion on, and his disability is a fundamental part of who he is. But it's not all he is. Unfortunately, Sex Education did fall down the same path as Doctor Who, as the progressive aspects became more and more superficial, more characters being added who had no personality or impact on the plot beyond the fact that they were a minority. I feel the need to stress again that I am not against diversity or representation. I'm all for it. There should really be more than one layer of substance to your characters, no matter what. The Chibnall era also had a similar problem of surface-level, virtue-signalling politics. I won't go on about this period of the show too much, since this era has been critiqued to Scarrow and back by everyone, myself included. There are a fair few things here that feel so ignorant that I have to hope they were written this way accidentally. The episode Rosa chalks up the social revolution of the civil rights movement to coincidence, dismissing the efforts made by people of colour in the 1950s and 60s, all while tiptoeing around the topic of racism, delivering surface-level, on-the-fence messaging. I'm not going to act like Destiny is a bad theme to include in your story, but the way it's done here is so poor taste and grossly mishandled. I'm going to take this opportunity to talk about another piece of media that handles themes of coincidence a lot better. Hamilton. And this definitely isn't just an excuse for me to be a theatre kid. Coincidence and destiny are significant themes in Hamilton. A recurring motif that appears in several songs is the lyric, look around at how lucky we are to be alive right now." Hamilton and Burr both have respective songs where they lament over losing everyone they love, questioning why they seem to survive everything thrown their way, as if they're both destined for something more. Why does this work when Rosa failed? Well, most importantly, the main purpose of Hamilton isn't to try and champion the fight against systemic racism, but also these themes of coincidence aren't an integral part of the plot. It's literally just the characters acknowledging how lucky they feel to be living in this time. These lines could be removed with basically no impact on the plot, but they do add a degree of character depth, particularly for Hamilton and Burr. And if you pick up on these motifs, it can add an extra layer of substance to the ending if you want to interpret it that way. Rosa pretty much outright says that the civil rights movement wouldn't have happened if Rosa Parks didn't refuse to give up her seat on the bus. One of these is significantly worse than the other. Fuck yeah, I finally found an excuse to talk about Hamilton on this channel. Dude, let me tell you, once I find an excuse to talk about Hadestown, it is so over. There's also the Doctor's core trait of anti-establishmentism being forgotten about in Kablam, as she defends a system built on blatant labour exploitation, as well as justifying said system's action of murdering an innocent person for no good reason. She also seemingly picks and chooses on the day whether it's morally better to kill someone or let them suffer and rot for eternity. The 13th Doctor also weaponizes the Master's skin colour to make him face a harsher punishment from the Nazis, and willingly lets someone else die in her place on more than one occasion, with no reflection on her morals or behaviour. She makes a lot of not great decisions in her tenure that are never properly acknowledged by the show, and the show itself pushes some very strange messages at times. It takes you away, doesn't properly acknowledge the fucked up behaviour of this dad, as he abandons his blind daughter, keeping her in constant fear for days at a time, also he can shag his dead wife. Resolution tells an incredibly insensitive and poorly written story of forgiveness, badly handling the topic of abusive and absent parents. And even when this era isn't grossly mishandling its messages and attempts at subtext, it's often just incredibly generic. Orphan 55's message starts and ends at climate change is bad. The Ghost Monument and Arachnids in the UK bravely push the message of gone bad. Most of the time, the Chibnall era either gives you bad substance or no substance. The point I'm trying to make here is, despite attempting to be more progressive than anything that came before, Doctor Who from Series 11 onwards can often feel like the most backwards period of the show to date. And I think it's because they're trying too hard? Now, I'm not going to act like everything before Series 11 has aged perfectly. I find Series 3's The Shakespeare Code a tough watch nowadays for various reasons. But to be honest, the vast majority of the social and political commentary in New Who previously has aged pretty well. There was actual substance to the messaging. It felt like the writers genuinely had something to say. As opposed to nowadays, where a lot of the time it feels like the commentary is just there to be there. Look at the first episode of the latest series for a prime example of this. The Robot Revolution contains commentary on incels. And I say commentary very loosely here because... no. Alan here is meant to be an incel. Despite having a girlfriend. Yeah, I'm really not sure what they were trying to go for here. Like, he's definitely a misogynist, which is a common trait among incels, but... he just isn't an incel. The definition of an incel is someone who is unable to find a partner and thus harbours incredibly toxic views towards women. Alan has a girlfriend. It feels like the term incel was mainly included here as a buzzword, and this isn't the only instance where the episode does this. The main villain of the episode is this big robot called the AI Generator. Despite this, the episode contains zero commentary on AI. The name literally just exists to be wordplay. Once again, another phrase used as nothing more than a buzzword, with no actual discussion on the topic it's referencing. Now, I'm one of the 5 people who actually kinda likes Joy to the World. I think it's a harmless, easy-viewing Christmas episode. It's nothing groundbreaking, but it's not trying to be, and I enjoy it for that. Though, over time, I have come to find its attempt at political commentary a little weird. This episode references Partygate. I'm sure most of my UK viewers know about this already, but for any international viewers, Partygate is the name of a controversy involving the Conservative government, when it was revealed that they'd been regularly having parties during the pandemic, despite their own rules forbidding those kinds of activities. It also emerged that they were embezzling taxpayers' money to pay for food, drink, and wine fridges for these parties, since they were drinking so much alcohol. And yeah, that's pretty fucked up. And it is good to see such a big scandal still being acknowledged years later. But that's the thing, it's literally just an acknowledgement that Partygate did in fact happen. The commentary doesn't really go any further than this was bad. Once again, it feels like the commentary is literally just there to be there, with no added layers of substance or messaging and no significant impact on the plot itself. This is quite a difficult topic to discuss, because everyone has different thresholds on what they consider good or acceptable commentary. I'm sure the comments of this video will be full of plenty of people with less progressive views than me, and I'm sure there will also be people outwoking me. It does happen. Like this guy, who got mad because I commented on Stephen Moffat's former trope of having a lot of his female characters being bisexual, but the idea of them actually having same-sex relationships was only ever played for a laugh. It was an outdated trope that I'm glad he moved on from, but I don't think those jokes were made with misogynistic or homophobic intent. And this person really did not like that take. Or this person on Twitter who called me sexist because I said the 13th Doctor sometimes behaved out of character in a way that the show refused to properly address or acknowledge. The point is, you're probably not going to agree with me on everything in this video, and that's okay. I do look forward to seeing what others have to say in the comments. I also look forward to seeing all the people who just came here to comment woke bad and clicked off in the first 5 seconds. Frankly, I think one of the main problems facing the Doctor Who community when it comes to this topic is that there are too many people on both sides of the debate who can't see the forest for all the trees. They're too busy having petty arguments over superficial things that they fail to see the bigger picture. And I get it. It's hard to focus on genuine criticism when so much of the debate is swallowed by, ew, pronouns! It's also hard to raise these criticisms without being scared of getting lumped in with these people. I mean, I spent like a whole 3 minutes earlier prefacing this video with reassurance that my opinions come from a place of good faith. I understand the hesitancy. When you see a show you love so much getting dogpiled on by people who seemingly misunderstood the original message, it is easy to swing the other way and choose to blindly defend it instead. I must admit, I am somewhat guilty of that behaviour myself. I think I definitely gave Series 14 and 15 more credit than they were due in my reviews. And that is saying something because I was still very critical of the parts I really did not like. If there's a message or summary I could try and make out of these ramblings, I guess it would be, it's okay to take a stance. That's the best way I'd probably summarise the political commentary in Doctor Who nowadays. It feels too safe, if anything. Like the show is scared to actually have something to say. Which is ironic, because Russell T Davies seems more insistent on pushing his ideals than ever before. I mean, if we're being honest, even if the messaging in the show suddenly became layered and well written again, there'd still be that crowd who would take issue with it regardless. But that isn't an excuse to not put the effort in. There are plenty of people out there like me who agree with the messages being pushed and want to see them being done justice. Russell T Davies is very good at political commentary. Years and Years is a fantastic show that I genuinely cannot recommend enough, so I really don't get what's caused him to fall short in the way he has recently. I do think his heart is in the right place, but he has made some truly baffling creative decisions since returning to Doctor Who, and I do honestly understand why this current era has even alienated some of its left-wing audience. It's not too late for the show to get back on track. The War Between the Land and the Sea is currently airing as I write this, and it feels like a massive step in the right direction, bringing the edgier, more mature vibe I was hoping Doctor Who would take once RTD returned. The spark is absolutely still there, and I really hope that this is the start of the show sorting itself out and not being afraid to deliver nuanced, well-written commentary and messaging, because it can be done despite what many bad faith people say. But yeah, that's about it really. Thanks for watching, please subscribe. Pronouns.